Hello everybody and welcome to Dan Cave and welcome to part 1 of the video build series of the NuNu Toyota Celica GT4 ST165 from the 1991 Tour de Course. So this is part 1 of that video build series, as I just said. So in part 1's going to cover the bodywork, to cover all the prep, prime, paint, decal and clear coat. So this is a kit I picked up last year at some point. And as I said in kind of my end of year review and my first bench update of this year, I think rally cars might feature a little bit this year. I did a couple last year. I've always liked rally cars. Always liked rallying. So I'm kind of feeling rally cars at the moment. So this is the first rally car of this year. So I thought with something from the early 90s, which was an era I remember fondly. So yeah, so today, as I said, we're going to cover opening the box, bodywork prep, getting all that into primer and paint, decals, etc. So before we jump to the bench, a message from our sponsors. No, before we jump to the bench, if I could ask, if you haven't subscribed, if you could please do so. If you like this video, please give a like. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them. They are wholeheartedly encouraged. But I would definitely ask, if you've not subscribed, please subscribe. It really gives the channel a boost as the subscriber numbers keep on growing. So thank you for staying with me so far, and let's get on over to the action, and I'll come back at the end for a little bit of a summary. Let's dive straight into the box of goodies and get started. So I suppose the first step in the first place for this part, because we're doing all the body work, is to get the instructions out, because really I want to be painting all the body colored parts at the same time. So I'm marking them all on the instructions, make sure I don't forget them. And that includes such items as the chassis, the interior tub, wing mirrors, and some light covers as well. So all these parts are going to be painted in the body color. So it's worthwhile doing them all in one step to get them all primed, painted at the same time. So that's the interior tub being removed from the sprue. So all those parts will get cleaned up. Remove any sprue attachment points. In this case, as it's the interior tub, just use a knife to trim off those. So for the wheels, I'm going to keep them on the kind of grouped end of the sprue as shown, so we can paint them all in one go and save mounting them individually. The bumper itself is going to get attached beforehand. The chassis will fit. In fact, the chassis mounts to two locating points on the back of the front bumper anyway, so it does need to go on before the chassis anyway. So I'm just going to use a little bit of extra thin, so that mates basically along the line on the front wing. And a couple of other points just in behind on the inside of the bumper as shown. So the roll cage is in the body color as well. So that's all going to get removed from the sprue. And any seam lines dealt with as well. I've seen people paint these on the sprue, and I think that's not my preferred method, because obviously you've got sprue attachment points to deal with. I think it's also easier to assemble the roll cage at this stage as well, to paint it all in one go. So each part is removed, and any of the seams are dealt with using some UMP thinny sticks. Also using a UMP customizable sander as well. Cut to a sharp point, so that allows you to get into the kind of narrow little gaps as closely as possible. So in fairness to this kit, there's actually not a huge amount of seam lines on it. It's very, very pleasing. So once that's cleaned up, so basically I'm going to just prop the roll cage into the body shell. So it's not going to be glued into the body shell at this stage. It's just going to be propped in. There is a lower cross piece towards the back, so I'm going to glue that on one side. So you have a few minutes working time with the extra thin, so you want it to basically hold the piece but not be completely solidified. And then basically do the same on the other side. And then there's the little bit of juggling to get that sat into its locating points. And then as I've zoomed in here, we're going to try and slowly manipulate all these attachment points. Try and get them all lined up. It's quite a little juggling activity, really. Not the easiest job to do, but it is time well spent because you get the roll cage all put together in one piece. Makes it easier to paint, and then it can be added in at a later stage when you're doing the interior. So basically you're trying to line up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attachment points while keeping the kind of bottom part in its locating holes as well to make sure everything is lined up properly. So once you get it kind of held in a suitable position, a little bit of extra thin at the joints. That will help to begin the curing process. And of course, you get a few minutes working time with the extra thin anyway, so you got enough time to kind of maneuver it around a little bit if needs be, just to make sure that everything is nice and square and in its right location. So there we go. That is a job well done on that. So that's off the cure. Once the front bumper is cured, we can go back and start the body cleanup. Now, I will say with this kit, I was extremely pleasantly surprised at how little cleanup was needed. The seam lines do seem to run pretty much in the panel gaps, and that makes it very, very easy to clean up. So there's no big seam lines. A little bit of work with a sander, little bit of work with a customizable just in around where the boot pins are. But overall, there's minimal work here. A couple of little tiny little flash points in around the window supports, and that's about it. Also, don't forget to do inside the light clusters as well. So once that's all done, we can start attending to basically the glued join where the bumper is joined onto the front of the car. So that is actually a visible seam on the car. Some of these kits, you'll want to basically eliminate any seam lines here, but on this kit, this will want to be a visible seam. So once we've sanded everything back, we can go in with a UMP buffer and basically buff everything back to a nice finish. Get rid of any scratch marks from the sanding process. Not that it was a huge amount in this case. So once all that's done, I'm using a Tamiya scribing tool. Absolutely brilliant tool. Beautifully sharp point and a very nice, comfortable, weighted tool to hold in your hand. And we can basically go around and mark out any of the panel lines. Basically adds a little bit of depth and makes it easier to get a wash in there and just makes them a little bit more pronounced. So I think for all these panel lines is literally 2 passes with this blade. And that panel line is completely sorted then. So I'm just making sure any excess plastic is cleared off the tip of the blade. quick pass down the door shot, then a second pass, and then the same along the bottom door shot as well. And that's basically repeated across all the kind of major panel lines. Bonnet line as well, same process, 2 quick swipes. So once we're happy with all that, all those parts are then mounted and we can start the priming process. So I'm using UMP white primer, shot through the UMP Apex airbrush. That's running at about 30 psi. Because it's white plastic and it's very clean, it's very, very hard to see the paint go down. So everything gets about 3 coats, just to take away that kind of shiny plastic look. They're not wet coats. They're not really a dust coat either, so it's kind of somewhere in between a medium and a light pass. But 3 of those coats and everything is completely covered. And that includes, as I said earlier, that includes the chassis and the interior tub as well. So throughout this recording process, I am slowly but surely losing my voice a little bit. So apologies for that, and please bear with me. So as I said before, basically everything's getting 3 coats. Chassis gets 3 coats. And the bodywork's going to get 3 coats. So because it's white paint on white plastic, not really a huge amount to see with this, because all you're really going to see is go from shiny white plastic to basically matte white primer or semi-matte white primer. But however, the process is important. The UMP white's good primer, but you want to build it up slowly. You can't quite hose it on like you can a little bit with the black primer. So once that's been left overnight to cure, the base coat is going to be Zero Paint's pure brilliant white. And again, 3 is the magic number. We're going to do 3 coats of this. So the wheels get 3 coats, front and back. Also make sure we get around the sides of the actual wheels as well. Then there's the rear strut brace, which is also in white. We've got a wing mirror to do. Of course, earlier in the video, I actually cleaned up both wing mirrors, but this car actually only has one. Make sure you get the correct one, which I think is on the left-hand side. Yes, it is. So then the roll cage as well gets the same treatment, interior tub as well. There'll be a little bit of detail painting on this later on when we get to the interior stage, but its main base color is white, and the same with the chassis as well. You can see the extent of the detail on this kit. It is curbside, there's minimal kind of engine detail, but that's going to get covered up with a skid plate anyway. So we're just blowing off any dust off the bodywork, and then we're going to go around and do the obligatory 3 coats once again. So once again, I'm using a UMP Apex. So for these lacquer paints, I'm running at about between 15 and 20 psi. And now I think I'm on to the 3rd and final coat. So as you can see, and as it was something I mentioned in the inbox review, I've left in the window supports because those roof bars, the roof pillars are very, very fragile. So it saves risking them at all. So basically anywhere where those supports are mounted, that's all going to get painted semi-gloss black later anyway for window rubbers. So as you can see, I'm trying to vary the spray pattern, make sure I'm going side to side and up and down to make sure that there's no kind of striping effect introduced. But 3 good coats. It's white plastic, white primer, white paint. We're not trying to kind of barrier any other kind of color. So with 0 paint, because you're using quite thin coats, if you're trying to change color from, say, a gray plastic or bright color plastic, you would need a lot of coats to get the color to build up, get that depth of color. But because it's all white, it's just 3 coats are needed. So once that's left overnight, once again, to fully dry, it's time to get on to the decaling stage. So no clear coat, just straight onto the lacquer paint. So I'm going to show pretty much this in its entirety. So I'm going to speed up all the footage so you'll get to see basically the entire process of decaling the body shell. So as is usual, off to my left, there's some more mortar. UMP decal solutions are just to the top of the screen. And I'm going to start with the kind of large red and blue flashes on the car. So I'm using a Tamiya decal scissors to cut these decals out. These are excellent pair of scissors. If you haven't got them, I would thoroughly recommend them. They are incredibly sharp, incredibly accurate, really, really good at their job. So let's roll some music and speed this up. So at least that gave my voice a little bit of a rest. And your ears, I guess. So yeah, so decaling's now complete. Decals have been left for a good 24 hours to completely cure. We can come back in now with some panel line wash. So using ammo neutral wash, because obviously you don't want black on a white body. That'd just be too much of a stark contrast. So neutral wash is nice kind of medium grey. We'll just use basically a liner brush to run that into any of the panel lines we want to highlight. So in this case, you're covering things like the bonnet, kind of door shuts, in around that front bumper section as well, and there's a little bit on the kind of rear hatch and in and around the rear bumper as well. So you're just letting the capillary action basically work. Load up the brush, touch it into the gap, and it should flow along the panel line. So with the ammo washes, they're enamel based. They basically won't do any damage to that lacquer paint whatsoever. And once they're left for a couple of hours to cure, we'll be able to come back and clean up any excess or tide marks we have. So we're going to do that cleanup with a little bit of Sansador odorless mineral spirits using a cotton bud, just basically to wipe away any of the excess. So this is one of these jobs where you basically need to keep working your way around the body, keep on checking. You don't want to kind of leave a little bit of excess trapped under that clear coat. So you want to make sure this is done completely all the way around the car body. So it's also one of these jobs where you can use basically as many cotton buds as you need, keep on replacing them, particularly with a white car, because any remaining wash will stand out on the white color. You can sometimes not get away with it, but it's not as obvious if you kind of streak a little bit on kind of darker colors. But there's absolutely no hiding place with a white color like this. To basically keep on working your way around the body, check it again, and then once you've left it for a few minutes, come back and check again. Because once you put the clear coat down, there's absolutely nothing you can do about any of those little runs or tide marks or excess wash. So we're just doing a final check and we're all good to go. So for this clear coat, I'm using Pro Range 2K. So I've gone back to Pro Range because I ran out of gravity and I still had quite a lot of Pro Range. Because the activator was stored in a relatively cool place in the shade, it was still looked fine. So I did a quick test and it still seemed to cure properly, seemed to work properly. So I thought I'll give it a go. So the first coat is a semi-wet tack coat. So it's been mixed. What was the mix ratio? I think it's 2-to-1 with Pro Range. Then you add a little bit of thinner for a second and add a little bit further thinner for a third coat. So it's a lot thicker than gravity. So you need to consider that. But essentially you are looking for that almost patented, as I've called it, kind of a shiny pebble dash. So you're not looking for a kind of smooth clear coat on the first coat. Although I do reckon with Pro Range you can maybe go a little bit heavier because it is a thicker 2K. The gravity is much thinner, so you do have to be a little bit more careful. So maybe something I'll experiment with on future builds if I keep using Pro Range. I don't know yet. Depends on when I next get to order some gravity. But as I said, it's you are just trying to get down basically a coat that once it's left for 15 minutes is incredibly sticky, and that gives the second coat something to adhere to, and that's the coat you'll want to begin to bring out that shine. So we're just going to speed up the tape, speed up this process. We'll get all the way around the kit for that first coat. So leave that for 15 minutes, and then we can come back in for the second coat. At this stage, if there is any kind of stray fibers or hairs, they are salvageable at this stage. You can get them out with a pair of tweezers, and you will probably get away with it. So for this coat, we are starting to look for that kind of good shine. It can have a little bit of orange peel at this stage, but you don't want too much. So once again, I'm kind of working my way around the body. Again, there's another stray little fibre on the bonnet, which I think I've managed to retrieve. And as you can see, that shine is beginning to build. It's not quite perfect. I think switching between 2Ks technique is slightly different between them. So this Pro range I've not used it in a while. Has been sat in the cupboard for a long time, so that could give some issues that I've seen. However, we've got a relatively shiny finish from the second coat. 15 minutes curing time, and we'll go back in for this final coat. And this is definitely the coat that you want as good a kind of clear, smooth finish, because once that sets, basically what you see is what you get. It will self-level a little bit, but once it starts to cure after about 15-20 minutes, that's what you're going to get. So the third coat, probably a little bit heavier than I wanted. Again, kind of as I said, I think maybe on the first coat you go a little bit heavier, and then the second coat can basically get that good shine, and then the final coat is just basically to deal with any kind of lingering orange peel. But in this case, the third coat is reasonably heavy. But I'm just looking to make sure that once it's passed, it settles out, and I get that kind of clean, smooth finish. It's definitely not quite as clear as the Gravity. You can kind of see a slightly different visual effect in it. In this case, it's definitely not as crisp as the Gravity has been. But then, as I said, I think I've sprayed it maybe not to optimal conditions. But a couple of more passes. And kind of looking over it, I think I'm reasonably happy with it. Yeah, that's not bad. I don't think it's going to get any better with more passes. So it's time to put that in its box. Once that's cured for about 24 hours, we can take it out and have a look. So let's head back to me for some final thoughts about how all this went. So, thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for getting this far. Yeah, I'm interested to know your thoughts on this kit and what you've seen so far. I have to be honest, I've really enjoyed this kit so far. Not, it's not not a big kind of works WRC team. It's it's not. It is a world championship winning car. I mean, it did win the world championship season before, so it is. At the time it was a top car from Toyota. But it's not one of the more iconic ones. I think the later Celicas became a little bit more iconic in that Castrol scheme. certainly through the sort of 90s, and then on to the Corolla running the Castrol scheme as well. But I've really enjoyed it. I think it kind of strikes a chord, because certainly probably in the mid to late 90s there was still a number of these earlier Celicas running on the Irish rallying stages. To always remember seeing them, because they are what I describe them as a slightly odd looking car to a certain extent. I think that the two later rallied versions, sort of 185 and the 205, are a little bit curvier, certainly more iconic. So this Celica has some resemblance to the later models, but is a little bit boxier, a little bit more angular. So yeah, so I've found myself surprisingly engaged by this as a topic, and I'm really enjoyed it. And I have to be honest, I really enjoyed the NuNu rally cars. And they're curbside kits. They're not over the top on detail, but they are reasonably well molded, as you've seen in this one. That bodywork had minimal work to do on it. Hardly any seam lines, almost non-existent flash. So it was a real kind of dream start to get into it. Now, obviously, we don't know how the rest of the build is going to go, but looking at the stuff in the box, there's not a huge amount on the running gear. There's not a huge amount on the interior, so I think this will kind of fly together. And the way it's looking, I think I'll be really pleased with that when I come out the other side of it. So yeah, really encouraged by this kit. So yeah, so if you have any thoughts on the car, on its significance in the rallying world, feel free to leave a comment. Or just any general comments if you want. And of course, if you've not already done so, please subscribe. Please drop a like. Please click the bell notification to make sure you get alerted of the videos as they are released. So thank you for watching so far. Hopefully you've not all been put to sleep by my slightly cold-induced voice at the moment. But yeah, so hopefully you've enjoyed that, and we'll see you all very soon, hopefully for part 2. So, bye-bye. See you all later.